We've got some.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Content is profit time. And today we have a guest that has been long overdue. We met him at Podfest, where he impressed us with his karaoke skills and incredible swagger.
Oh, yeah, karaoke. The good old days.
The good old days.
But let's not forget about his knowledge around podcasting. Today's guest is a personal branding coach that helps industry experts become content creators. Right down our alley, baby.
That's right. For over 17 years, he has advised and directed brand strategy for top Fortune 100 companies, including Apple, Coca-Cola, Walmart, and Wells Fargo. You could say he knows what he's doing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Please welcome host of the Brands and Brands podcast and karaoke master, Brandon Birkmeyer. Look at those dance moves right there. Brandon, welcome.
Oh my goodness! Hold on.
Unmute. There you go.
There you go. You are partying too hard over there in the back, in the back room, green room.
I was. They're trying to hold me down, trying to cut me off. We gotta stop. We gotta stop the music. Now the vibe dies. There's no fade out. It's just cut to black.
Over.
We're gonna have to start doing some like karaoke nights, right? And we bring like the whole podcasting crew. And I don't know if there is some sort of service out there where we can have karaoke, online karaoke in multiple locations. That would be pretty epic. Huh?
That would be so cool.
I'm sure we'll make it work out, guys. How are you today? I'm excited. Let's do this.
Yes, absolutely, Brandon. It's awesome catching up, right? It's more than a year now that we officially met and we've officially kind of like interacted. Back then, we had no show. Today, I think this is episode, 170. Congrats, man. And, part of it is meeting the network at that event that inspired us to put our message out and have these incredible conversations out. So I just want to thank you on the show that, you helped ignite and move forward. And with that said, I would love for you to share a little bit of who you are, your background.
Yeah. Before that, though, I think you should call it personality is profit, because when I met you, it's like the content wasn't even there yet. But if you start with you start with your voice, the energy you bring to the table, and if you just keep that even in a networking aspect, like that's enough. But you turn that personality as profit and you put it into content, and it's game over, right? Like people are magnetically drawn into you. So it's like I was glad to meet you guys, and now I see you have a show going. It's exciting, man.
Yes,
thanks, man.
Thank you, man. Those words mean a lot, and I hope it serves as inspiration too for you listening. If you are thinking about starting a show and starting your own platform, it can happen. It doesn't have to be taxing. You can have fun with it. You can be yourself, which is so important. And Anyway, so Brandon, who are you? Why are you here?
Well, yeah, what's funny is it's my journey's kind of been a long one, but last 2 years ago, I left a corporate job. And I've been in 17, 18 years at corporate ad agencies, building, brand marketing, brand strategy for very large companies. But when I left that, I realized I had this amazing resume, but when I wanted to do something for myself, I realized I had no reputation. I had nothing that was mine that I could take and give to share with other people and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm all about. This is my perspective. And that hindered me. It made it a lot harder to get consulting jobs. It made it a lot harder to have clout behind anything I was presenting for people to believe it and say, this is the guy who's known for this, whatever it might be. And I realized I had an uphill battle. I had to start figuring out how to invest in my own reputation. And so branding became a big focus for me in terms of my personal brand. And it was a bit of a journey figuring out how to get there. Just like you guys, I was out there, I was networking,
Yeah.
And I figured I need to find my voice. I need to find a way to get my content out there and to create, like, what is it that I even believe in? What do I want to talk about? Who do I want to help? I had to figure all that out. And it's
Yeah.
funny is I had the advantage of at least knowing like marketing, like I got to take these lessons from working with the largest companies out there and really say, how do I apply this to a human being? How do I apply this to a real person? And that's kind of how I got my start. And there's been some pivots along the way. Now I help podcasters get better at podcasting and build their podcast brand. I help people who are, like me 2 years ago, looking to build their personal brand, do that through the power of content creation. So that's my world now. I love it. And that's where I am.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Dude, thank you for sharing, and the first thing that I wrote down here was kind of that resume versus reputation that you talked about, right? And I feel like nowadays you see it in even CMOs, people in very high position in the corporate world, if you want to call it there, or any other companies. They're building their reputation, not just their resume, right? Like a lot of people now have their own newsletters, their own personal communities. And I think that is I love that in the first place because it gives you a personal look and, the insights into somebody's brains and what they're doing and how they work.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I see it as a safe move from those people because now they become an asset, right? They become an asset for those companies, right? And whether, you, the listener, works for a corporate job or you're trying to kick off your own company, right? This is something that you must do nowadays specifically is build your own reputation and start creating content around you, whether it doesn't have to be necessarily a podcast. Like if you feel more comfortable doing newsletters, start there, right? And promote your newsletters and start getting people behind it, because as you build your reputation, then I think it is going to be easier for people to move on from field to field, right? Because you're going to have, like you call it, right, the cloud behind you. People are going to believe in what you do. You're going to have an audience that likes you, not just for the things that you're sharing, but for who you are. So that being said, I'm pretty curious on that transition that you did kind of from the corporate world to yourself. I'm sure you brought a lot of lessons with you along that journey. And I'm sure there are some really good lessons that you've learned that you wouldn't have been able to learn in a corporate setting. Let's put it that way. So I'm curious, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I always have like, there's a million ways I can go. So I'm trying to figure out like where to start. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But what reminds me of like when I got started, was you mentioned like that comfortable like feeling, right? Like we all, like I was that guy. I am not a risk taker, right? Like jumping into entrepreneurship was not my go-to move. That's why I was so long in a corporate environment. Yeah. It was my comfort zone. I was on that routine road, like doing laps and laps and laps, taking very small steps to improve in my career. And actually I did pretty well for myself, but I realized that, there was this part of me that I didn't get to express. I wasn't growing in the way I wanted to grow. And I wasn't achieving these accomplishments. Like I wasn't mapping my own path, up the mountain, if you will. And that became like the ambition inside of me didn't match, the comfortableness of me living, a life where I was, taken care of and like I had what I wanted. Yeah. So like the ambition piece was like always a fire. So I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. And I actually had to cut off. Well, I just had to murder the old me, right? I had to murder my life before and say, you know what, I'm going to give this up and burn the bridges, if you will, and say, what is the next step so that I can be free from that wanting to be comfortable. So the next step for me was, I started to get out there networking, meeting people, but really I did what you said, Luis. I said, I'm going to start writing blogs. I'm going to start recording podcasts. I'm going to start recording videos. I tried all of it because I didn't know what was going to fit me. Right.
Yes.
And I realized like I started to type things out and I was like, well, this is kind of difficult. Like you hit little writer's blocks and, like it doesn't, like the things in my head that I want to say weren't coming out fast enough when I was typing because my hands couldn't keep up with my thoughts. And then I tried video and it was fine, but I'm like, I'm trying to look up at the camera and then I'm losing my train of thought. And then I'm trying to look back at my notes and I'm forgetting what I wanted to say. And honestly, podcasting came most naturally to me because I could just have a conversation. And it's honestly, it's easy to start with someone else. Like I get you guys in a room, we chat it up, we chop it up, we talk about whatever we feel like talking about. It's the most natural thing we've all been born to do is sit here and have a conversation.
Yeah.
But then I could do that. And I think, who do I want to talk to? Who are the people I actually want to help? And I imagine myself having a conversation with them. I think of like 3 simple things, a topic that I want to cover and 3 points I want to make. And I just riff. I just go off the top of my head and like, lo and behold, I turn on the microphone and 30 minutes later, I'm like, what just happened? I just have all this content that got created. So podcasting for me became the engine, the starting point for everything else. And I was like, if I could do this, if this comes so naturally to me and I can bottle this, my world suddenly changes, right? And I know the question was about lessons, but I want to take a pause there and I'll get into the lessons I learned in corporate. But I know for you guys, probably the same thing. Like, was it natural for you guys creating podcasts?
So yes and no.
Yeah.
So I love where, and I have here, why podcasting? How do you find out, what suits you? And those are like different notes and things that resonate because we were in a similar spot, right? Like we there's 5 episodes that we recorded way before we met you, and those are locked up in the vault because there's a lot of friction on the production side of things, right? We were setting up on Fonzie's room. The setup alone took about an hour. We have multiple lights, we have multiple cameras. Then the friction of editing that, we didn't have a team back then, so
it was the perfectionist mindset.
The perfectionist mindset, right? So at that point we were like, no, this is not for us. Even though we invested thousands of dollars in equipment too. That was the other thing. We were like, because we invested this money in this equipment, we're actually gonna do it. No, scratch that. So then it took us like a whole year to and that's just on the podcast side of things. Before that, there were a few years on different types of content as well. But it got to the point where we sat down and we're like, okay, what is our minimum viable content today? It started as a Facebook Live, and then it's like where it transitioned into our minimum viable platform, which then became the show, which today is an incredible machine that, pumps out about 400 pieces of content every single month and multiple points of contact. There's a whole system behind it, but it came with time because it's what suits us. And that's why what you just said resonates so much. And we've been so passionate lately about helping people find their own framework. So I know, Fonzie, you have a question. Like,
Wait, no,
right.
I just want an addition, not a question.
Oh,
I'll
let
you do the question
that's
here. But Brandon, you mentioned kind of like now that you're podcasting, you have a topic and then you have 3 points that you hit on and then you riff, right? And we've encountered this. We used to do it the same way, right? When we started this Content is Profit, we would do it the same way. But we know of people that are like, oh, but what if, I choke a little bit or I don't know exactly at one point what to say. I need to have it all laid down. And to that, I would say, well, confidence comes with experience, right? And if you go back and you listen to our first episodes, they're not the best. Let's be honest, right? There's a lot of, I don't know what to say right now, right? Yeah. And if you see the video, we look sweaty sometimes.
Only
in the armpit area. But as we go now, episode 170, we are more confident on what we're doing, right? We got that experience behind our back, and it's more comfortable for us to riff at certain parts of the conversation. If we were to do a solo episode and we do just 3 bullet points, we can definitely elaborate with those, because not only we have the confidence now sharing the message, but we also have the confidence in that the message is right because we have tested it for 170 episodes, right? In 2 years of business that we've been doing the one thing that we're doing right now. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of people, I feel like they want to start off and move forward always, right? Like, I'm just going to start and it's going to be perfect from the beginning, and their expectations are just set too high. And when they get that first blow, it's like, whew, let me stop here, turn around and look for another solution. And at the end of the day, it's about that consistency and execution, right?
Obviously it takes time, right? But I think, and this will kind of tie back into the other question too about what I learned in corporate, but I think for me, it starts with your truth, right? And I would call it your brand truth. Other people call it brand identity. I say truth because it's a human word, right? You know what is true to you. You know what your experiences are. And when you talk from your experience and your history, it's hard to falter. It's hard to have stumbling blocks and to run into, like those mind gaps where you're like, I'm not sure what to say, because you're talking from experience. You're not trying to convey some random message that you crafted on a piece of paper. I especially don't include research when I am podcasting. If I do, I'll like find one stat, I'll write it down and say, okay, I'll read this one thing and people know I'm reading it because it's obvious. But I tried writing it down and I tried to like read it and it sounded like robotic. And I tried to like read and then riff, and that sounded like confusing because I was guessing. But when I just speak from experience, I never run out of content because I'm only talking about things I've done and things that I've shared and things that I've been through. When you do that, you don't run into roadblocks. Yes, it takes practice. It does take practice. But those 3 anchor points help me every time, because I'm like, I'm just talking about these 3 things today. If I run out of things to talk about, I'll just move on to the next point and keep going. And that brand truth thing, these are things that most brands start with first, right? So with your podcast, right, think of it like you're Coca-Cola, right? And you're like, what do I need to figure out is me? What is different between me and someone else? And the word branding comes from like a long time ago. It's like used to brand cattle to like make your mark and say, this is my cow, right? But, and it actually is way before that. People used to like put designs on plates to say like, this is like my crafted, pottery and whatnot. But when you think about that, what Coca-Cola did, and they're amazing advertisers, right? That's what everyone says. But what they did is they made their bottles identifiable. That's one of the early things when everyone was starting to bottle their sodas. Coca-Cola said, let's build a bottle that when people hold it, they recognize it, right? So now think about that and apply it to your personal brand, to your podcast. Do people recognize your show if they heard it and they didn't select it? If it just played, can they identify it as you? And the things that I think contribute to that as a content creator are a couple things, right? Are the topics, is the subject matter you cover, is it consistent? Are people going to say, yeah, Luis and Luis are the content profit guys, right? Because every time I'm listening to their show, it's something related to that's going to help me use content to create profit. If you're true to your identity, you become recognizable. So that's lesson number 1.
Yeah, I love it, and also like it ties on to what you're currently doing. Like not only as a business, but also you practice what you preach, right? And you are out there every single time, and to not batch the question, but it's like when you compare entrepreneurship with corporate lessons, I feel like there are corporate lessons there, but there's a reason why we are entrepreneurs and why we're crafting our own road at the same time. And I feel personally, I also come from corporate, that the lessons that I've taken on my entrepreneurship journey in the last 5 years are way more valuable, right? Like the growth is incredible, like especially when we put out publishing, and there could be some frameworks that we might learn at our job or the corporate environment that can help us. Those are small pieces because we never really truly see the whole picture, but where we are, in our own venture with our own teams, developing that culture, right? We basically at the very beginning we touch every aspect of it, and then we start placing the people that can elevate that to a whole new level, and things are great. So I just want to make that remark, and with that I want to preface a question on your framework. Like, how was the journey of like discovering your own thing? Do you remember a moment where you were like, this is it, this is what I'm gonna be doing for the next year, right? Like where it's like you found it, or has it been progressively, right?
Yeah, it's definitely taken time. I've pivoted and changed. And I think you can't just like stay on one road, especially when you're starting. You almost have to, you start a little broader and you kind of figure it out as you go. When I started, I was trying to be a marketing consultant for entrepreneurs. It was, let me help you figure out your website and your Facebook ads and your email marketing and that kind of thing. But as I started to figure out who I was and who I really wanted to help, what's great about being an entrepreneur is you get to continue to work with the people you want to work with more and stop working with the people you don't want. So it started to shift, and more people were like, how did you create that podcast? How did you get started? I like how you did it. And so I started to help them with podcasting. And what I saw is, for me, it was fine. I love helping people find their voice. But really, my branding and marketing experience is like, it's what I nerd out about. It's what I'm passionate about. I like helping people with this marketing stuff. So I was like, how do I take these people that want my help, the podcasters, the content creators, and take it to the next level? And you mentioned something that stuck out to me, which is this idea of, it's the idea of learning from things that you've done in the past, right? Taking corporate knowledge, and applying it to entrepreneurship is difficult. But I think what most of us actually try to do is we try to forget everything we've learned and we try to start over. We make it really hard on ourselves. I don't know why we do that. And for me, I think podcasters are very guilty of that. We like discover podcasting and we say, you know what, I can only do it the way podcasters do it. I don't want to learn from anything else. And I think that that's a barrier. So what I help people when I'm like, let's talk about podcast branding, I start saying, what can we learn from everywhere else? What can we learn from popular brands? What can we learn from personalities? And what can we learn from other channels, from YouTube, from blogging, from social media?
Yeah.
And those lessons are huge for the podcaster who, if you hit a ceiling in your audience, it's because you're not taking these lessons into effect. And I can give you guys an example if you want to get into it.
Absolutely.
Yes, let's do it. Nitty gritty,
All
baby.
right. I'm going to put you guys... Absolutely. I'm going to put you guys on the spot here for a second. I hope you go with me on this, right?
Yes. Go.
If I had to ask you, like your most recent episode, and I think it's an interview, right? If you had to give your audience says, I want to listen to like one more hour or one more show with you guys, what would the next show you'd want them to listen to be?
That's a good question.
It's okay to say, I don't know.
No.
So this is what I would do. I would, if I have access to a conversation with that person, I would be like, okay, what is the biggest issue right now that is holding you back? What is the next step that you need to take? And depending on their answer, I will tell them, hey, this conversation with this person would be incredible for you, and send them that episode.
But podcasting is limited, right? They are in the ether. We have no idea who they are. They're listening to it in their car. You're not there with them. They've selected your show. They started to listen. They finished it. And what happens next? What would you want them to go to?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that podcasters don't think about that. If you have, then you're at an advantage, right? The app is going to just send them to your recent episode, or even you'll tell them subscribe and listen next week, right? Same thing with this. What I'd like you to do is know, episode 100 is the most important episode you can listen to. Whatever that is. Like if you're talking about repurposing this week, I want you to send them to your ultimate show about repurposing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. Also, in my head, it's like, that's good, because this morning I actually sent an email like this, right, with somebody that got referred for the show, and I didn't have the information that Fonzie's asked for, and I was like, hey, here I sent 3 links, right? Here's the general show. If you want to scroll and find something that you like, here's our latest episode, and here's the episode with the person that referred us, right? I don't know. I haven't received any feedback. This is the first time I did that, right? I'm like, let's see what happens. But going back, I'm like, okay, the latest episode, they'll listen to that, and then there's no next episode, right? Which is like, whatever. But it was a really good one because it was Amanda Holmes.
Yep.
Super awesome. The ultimate sales machine. But at the same time, the episode with the guest that referred him is like episode 80, right? So there's a ton of stuff like right after. So it's a mix of both, maybe. And I love that, right? I love that fact because, it's a new perspective. And
it's focus. It's focus. And it's hard to, like, if someone's on a journey with you and they're like, I want to listen to this episode all about sales, most likely they want to hear more episodes about sales or how you turn content into sales, right? And so if you're like trying to lead them on this journey, mention that, right? You can say in the podcast, or at least if you forget to record it because you don't know what it was, you can add it in the show notes. Like, this is the next most important episode for you to listen to. And guess what? If you have designed it the right way, there's only like 3 or 4 episodes that are like the most important ones. And you know why they're important? Because they're the most true to your identity, your brand truth that we talked about. Yeah. And they lead them to your other services, to how you help them, because impact is brought by how you help your audience, right? So if you want to have that impact, you've got to say, great, I've led you down the road. I gave you the content you want to listen to. And now if you need help, here's my most important things that I can give you to help you. And also, like, join my email list, like whatever it might be.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like, I forgot the word that I was trying to search, but in the intro we were like, hey, if you want to know more, go to contentisprofit.com, right?
Call to action.
Full transparency. Of course, they're going to be joining the email list, right? But there's something of value there that we want to give them, right? But don't get me wrong, I love I called it the most important episode framework. I love that, right? That call to action right there. Keep them in that engagement loop with you. Keep getting to know you, and in that most important episode, probably is an episode that is gonna put them in the frame of mind of what are the next steps, what are the next things you need to learn, and what is the next step you need to take in order to develop a partnership together, right? To maybe start working together or jump on a phone call, all these other things. So
right. I stole that. Guess what? Who already does that? YouTubers already do that, right? Go up here and click on this video and check out the most related thing. Bloggers already do that. There's like right in the middle of it. It's like, click the link to this other story, or here's my series of 7 things. We just, like, because the tools we use are a little more limited, like number one, like a podcast, if you have a podcast, it's hard to understand which episodes people are listening to. It's hard to understand like what keywords people are searching for, because they don't, like, Apple doesn't share that. But so because we don't have the tools and we're limited, we just stop doing the work and we create random content just that kind of relates to our topic. But the same rules apply. Create cornerstone content, send people to it, and then offer them value, period.
Yeah, I love it that this word came to mind: simplify, right? And it is a thing. I on the drive to the studio today, I was going through in my mind something like that, right? On somebody is inviting us to their live show, and they ask for a bio, right? And then in my head, I'm like, what is the framework for a bio, right? Like, because a lot of people that are in this medium are interviewing or doing that. It's like, how can I make my host job easier by providing these tools ahead of time, right? And then it's like, how do I go and provide maybe a very insightful bio if I've never done one before? Then and then it goes to the framework that you're going and talking here, is like going to several different bios that in our eyes they look solid, that it was interesting to look at, it cause curiosity, elevate the guest, right? And then it's like, what are the elements that are inside of that bio? And then we craft one like that, and that becomes the official bio that is provided in this incredible assets website that we will create, right? So I'm like, in my head, that's what happened. But I see that hacking, I don't want to call it hacking, but it's like that research, what is the framework? What is the structure that all these incredible publishers have crafted for years? Because YouTubers have been publishing for years, right? Really big ones are going to be there present for years. They know something, right? Like, might as well, go in there. It's like, what are those elements that we can then apply to our own platform? And I love that you think that way, because that's when everything changed for us. I asked you that question earlier. I'm like, that's when everything changed for us as far as the publishing. We're like, this is the collection, this is the framework, this is how we put these elements in place, call it podcast, call it content, call it interactions, right? Mm-hmm. And then let's go execute, revise it, improve it, execute, revise it, improve it. And that's how it's grown. So I love that this is what you guys are doing on the publishing and the podcast side of things with your own clients, man. We're speaking the same language. I'm totally geeking out about this, man. So good. So good.
Yeah, and it's something that I got into because for my own content, I was trying to figure out, like, what is it that I'm missing here? Because podcasts, as you guys know, they're just not great discovery tools. Not like only like 1% of podcasts actually have like really large audiences compared to YouTube and blogs and web traffic in general. And the reason is just the way the platform was built. So for me, I had to marry these two things. I'm like, I have the easiest, fastest way for me to create content is podcasting, period. So I'm like, how do I don't want to change to be a YouTuber or a blogger because they have better tools. I have to create what is in a place that's easiest for me. So I'm happy to help people learn how to podcast because it's the most natural way to do it. But I now have to take you across this bridge to figure out, how do you turn this content engine into an actual content engine? And how do you do it in a way that is strategic, that actually brings audience to you, leveraging all these other lessons from other media types? And that's what I help people do. Like, I'm coaching people right now on how to build their podcast brands, leveraging these tools, right? And it's like, for a lot of you, you have what, 160 or more episodes already? Is that right?
170 today. Congrats.
Yeah, there you go, 170, right? So with 170 episodes, right, that's intimidating to say, okay, now create in a way that you're creating pillar content, that it's related, that it's keyword research. That's intimidating. So what I do is I say, let's look backwards. Like, I'll help you go through, categorize your content that you've already created, and let's make sure that is working for you. Like, all this content that you put out there, it could just be sitting there not serving you. Like it came out, it was released, most of our listenership peaks at the beginning and then drops off. But if you reformat it and repurpose it like you guys talk about, and you do it in a strategic way where a lot of these episodes are grouped together, you're now establishing authority for certain topics, but only if you're doing it the right way. If you're categorizing the work the right way, if you're leveraging keywords and the right search engine tags and whatnot on YouTube, on your website, on your blog, if you're doing all these steps, and I'll go through it with you and take you guys through it together, we're like, let's create, momentum towards what you guys are actually trying to help people with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, let that be the action point of today's episode. Guide us through that, right? So people are right now, the listener right now is pen and paper in his hand, or for those that like to type, they have the computer in front of them, right? And if you are driving, make sure you just go back to minute 31 and you listen to this again. But all right, Brandon, just guide us through this process that you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll start with this. Like the number one most important thing you can do is have somewhere people should go. It's what we talked about before. So if you haven't created one piece of content, one podcast that is the one place you would send people with their next hour, create it. Create it today. Don't create anything else. Stop, create it. Say, what is that thing? And it's usually something like this. It's usually your ultimate guide to whatever your podcast is about, to content is profit, right? Yep. Or it is 10 steps to content is profit. Like what's the path, right? The beginner's guide, step by step, the first 10 things you need to do to start creating profit with your content. Create some kind of content like that you are proud of, that has the framework for how you know, or how you teach the thing that you teach, right? You have to have that cornerstone content for podcast as well as every other form of content. So I would start there, create that. And then you know what you could do? Every other episode that you've already released, you can go back to, if it's related to that core topic, go to your website, add a little paragraph that says, hey, if you learned a lot today and you're trying to figure out how to make profit from your content, you have to read this blog or listen to this episode. And then every forward episode, say the same thing. Drive people to that one episode that matters. And then on that episode, make sure you have a way for them to take the next step, which is download a freebie that you've created, the downloadable checklist, or the extra masterclass, or the details you couldn't provide, the resource list, so that now they're connecting with you and you can actually carry on a conversation with them.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. So step one, have somewhere where people can go to, right? And that can look at that pillar episode, we're going to call it. And then, or it could be the example, ultimate guide to turning your content into profit, right? That downloadable asset that they could get. What would be step number 2?
Yeah. So step number 2 for me is like, I would actually go in and start to categorize what your content's about. Like you can look at your old episodes, categorize it and say, like, you'll find, what's funny is you'll find it's not what you thought it was. You're gonna be like, oh, I'm going to have I'm sure 30% of my episodes are about content, and then 30% of my episodes are about profit. But it turns out 40 of them are about entrepreneurship or something like that, or, something else entirely. So when you start to categorize it, you realize there's themes, and either it's off brand and you you actually need to make it more on brand and focus on the things that are actually important, or there might be something that you realize your brand is really about and actually might redefine what your show is about in general. And what you want to be known for. So it's good to look backwards to see what you've been doing, but then also I like to design forward after that and say, what do I want this to be about? So you could tell when you look at my show, I did 90 something episodes, I think 94 episodes that were random, that were just marketing and entrepreneurship and everything. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to turn this into seasons just to help me frame it. And it changed my mindset. So now season 2, I was like, season 2 is all about content marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And then season 3 is all about personal branding. And I designed it. I said, I'm going to write 13 solo shows and say, what are all the ingredients to personal branding? Yeah. And I'm going to create an episode about each one of these ingredients. And then I'll try to bring in guests that relate, and they don't always. So, we'll tag them differently or whatever it is. But it helped me focus, knowing this is what I want people to take away. Almost like writing a book is how I create my seasons.
Yeah. I love that. I love the season aspect of it. I think it's a great framework. Just to recap here for the person that is listening and taking notes, step number one, have somewhere where people can go to, right? We already talked about that. Step number two, categorize, and it will help you prioritize and discover, right, what is your north or what has been your north, because maybe you had a perception of where you were going and maybe you're going in a totally different way. And then step number three, you said design forward, right? And I love this, right? I'm gonna kind of like do a little callback here to what you talk about branding, the cows and the Coca-Cola with the bottles, right? At the end of the day, it's about alignment, right? You mentioned if you are true to your identity, you become recognizable. And I agree what happens sometimes in podcasting, because we're all very curious in the podcasting world and we all want to know about everything. We start talking about a lot of topics and then we lose. I don't know if we lose, but the identity become a little bit cloudy for people to see, right? Mm-hmm. So thank you. I love that 3-step framework right there. We're definitely gonna put it in the notes for people to check it out. Remember, minute 31 if you want to go back and listen to this again.
Oh, so good. Dude, Brandon, masterclass.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. And, I'm sure people, if they're interested, we're going to actually leave all the links right below. And we're going to ask you in a second, where should we send them? Because they need to go through that journey with you as well in your own content. And it's so good, so good. So do you have any other questions, Fonzie?
Yeah.
Smart ones? There's so many.
Before that last question is, I know you're working in a master plan. You have a master plan that you're working on not a little, but a course, a course that you want to take people through and teach them all these, branding elements for their podcast and, help them be successful. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, right now I was trying to frame like what are the steps if you've already started a podcast and you're like, okay, I put all this work into it. Now I started it, and what do I do next? Like I got my friend group to listen to it, but how do I get other people to listen to it? I started to build out like, what's that course? I'm calling it Podcast Branded. And it is, my approach to taking those next steps to actually creating a show that helps with your identity, that helps you get found, that helps use those tools that are already out there that we talked about, the Google search and the YouTubes and the blogs, to help your content get found. And there's also some, lessons about repurposing in there as well, which I know you guys are experts at. But I think all of that is important. So, that's the setup right now for what I'm launching in the summer. But for right now, if you're just getting started, I would just go to brandsonbrands.com/resources. And you're going to find every freebie I have is there. And that's where I post all the newest information. That's the easiest place to go. And then you'll see, if you pick any of those items that are useful to you and you download them, you'll now be on, my insiders group, which is the first people who I'll tell, like, join the wait list for this course that's coming up in the summer. So
yes, love it. Is it brandsonbrands.com/resources, right?
That's right.
Awesome.
So good.
Yeah, go check it out right now.
In case you missed it, but brandsonbrands.com/resources. You got it, Fonzie?
Right, I know the accent sometimes gets in the way. I know.
It's gonna be right in the description too. So all you gotta do is scroll down and click right there and join the Insiders Circle. I love it. Dude, Brandon, it has been an absolute pleasure. We have our favorite question still to come, which is, are you ready?
Yeah.
I hope you are. All right, here we go. Where will you be if you do not publish?
Where would I be if I did not publish? I'd probably be looking for a job. I'd probably be going back into corporate, with my tail between my legs, trying to figure out, like, how do I continue to build this resume? And honestly, what that would mean is I would probably be on the road towards having a job, not having a job, having a job, not having a job. Because in most jobs in corporate, when you get to the top, there's fewer and fewer jobs, and you're stuck like freelancing when you really just want to have a job. So I'd probably go back to what was safe. So thank God I found a way to find my voice through the power of podcasting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking that risk, for others as well, because you're sharing your experience and inspiring others and motivating them to take action. So
yes,
thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Brandon, any last thoughts that you want to share with us and the people on the show?
Yeah, I'd leave you with this. I think at the end of the day, like what I love about what you guys are bringing to the table, like I think marketing has a lot of legs to it, right? We talked a lot about the identity and the message part of it today, but then one of the biggest pieces of it is the attention piece, right? How do you bring attention to your content? We talked about some of those strategies, but for me, I'm like, I want you to like think like a media company that understands that distribution is the most important part of attention, right? If we go back to Coca-Cola, which isn't the only brand I worked on, but I think they have such a great example of this. The reason that they are so popular, besides that they're identifiable, is that they are literally everywhere. They're not just in your grocery store. You can find them at the convenience store, the gas station, the theme parks, the movie theaters, and you can find them in every country around the world, every city. You can't walk 10 blocks without finding a Coca-Cola, and that's by design. It's not just because it was amazing and people wanted to buy it. They literally built the infrastructure. They built bottling companies in every city. They dug wells if there wasn't water in a country so that they could have water for the soda, and then they built delivery programs, bicycles in some cases. Like they built distribution. And if you're a content creator, you've got to think like a distributor. How do I get my content off of the podcast everywhere else where content can be consumed? How do I put it into emails? How do I put it onto Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn? How do I put it into articles and blogs? How do I make it text? How do I make it visual images? How do I make it quotes? How do I make it video? And all of that is you creating a distribution system. And guess what? Yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of work, but not if you follow the right systems and you set it up internally so that you have the right tools, the right processes in place, and the right people helping you to turn your little one-time hour recording into massive distribution.
I love this, man. You just spoke our language. Whew. I don't know if you saw us. We were taking notes in here.
Gong moment.
Yeah, gong
multiple
moment.
times. This is sort of the horns too. Like the crowd is going insane. Double gong moment. Like
yeah, Brandon,
yes.
This was amazing. I think when we talk about content is profit, specialists is a part of the distribution that people usually don't get, and setting the right systems in place for them to do that, right? And a lot of people just think it's about getting in front of the camera and talking, but it's like that is kind of like the top of the funnel, right? That is the part that everybody sees that happen. That when you are going, funnel hacking, and I'm doing air quotes in here, people usually see the front facing side of the processes, but they don't see all the stuff that is on the back. And that is the distribution, where you need to invest time, effort, resources into building those. So then you can, be successful for the long term, right? Because we're playing the long term game over here. So thank you so much for bringing that to the table. I think we can definitely do an episode on just that.
I love it. Well, and honestly, and you guys have your process. Like I also talk to people about repurposing. If they want to see how I do it, like the step-by-step of how I do it, on that resources page, or you can just go to brandsonbrands.com/toolkit for just this. I have my guide to repurposing, and it's 3 content creation tips, 11 content creator tools, 30 repurposed post examples, 28 content calendar prompts, and 30 bonus post ideas, all in this one resource. It's just one of the things on that page for you guys. It's, we each have our way to do it.
Yes.
If I can share that with you, if that helps, like you get a sense of like how passionate I am about helping podcasters build their brands and create more content.
Yes. Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. Guys, go check them out. brandsonbrands.com/resources or /toolkit. Is that correct?
That's right.
Oh, you got it, Fonzie. Good job, man. Good job.
Look at that.
I love what you mentioned at the end, that everybody has their own, way to do it, their own framework, right? Like we were in that trap of, man, I want to be like Gary Vee, but we don't have the resources that Gary Vee has. I mean, he has 3 TikTok specific editors. Like that's insane to me, right? Like, and again, we wish everybody to get to that level, right? But for that, you have to build, like you said, internal processes and your own stuff.
And you need to learn how to build those internal systems and processes instead of just relying on, let me get this hack real quick, that eventually you will either outgrow or that hack won't serve you because you don't have the capacity to execute it.
So thank you for providing those tools for people to, follow and continue and start building their own things, right? Because we got to start somewhere. So I appreciate you, Brandon. I appreciate you sharing your frameworks, sharing your lessons. What a fun episode.
I know, this
Thank
was
you, man.
amazing. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Whenever you move to the east side of the states, please let us know so we can go karaoke again and hang out.
We can go mountain biking where he's at too. So
exactly.
I'm gonna have to hit you up, man.
Yes. All right, guys. With that said, thank you so much for tuning into the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe. Follow the show in your favorite platform and follow us on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is right. And if you found today's episode impactful, if Brandon helped you move one step closer to your goal, please don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.
See ya.